the guardians of the deep, the brave, the bold, the unwavering.
Welcome to Awaaz the Voice. I am Vidushi Gaur and we are honored to have with us Commodore Ranjit Rai. He is a seasoned RNNC qualified officer who served as Director of Naval Intelligence and Director of Naval Operations. He is the author of acclaimed book, The Indian Navy at 75, reminiscing the voyage chronicling the Navy's incredible journey. Thank you so much for coming, sir. We are honored to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be with Awaaz. Whatever I can do, I shall try to do.
Thank you so much, sir. So let's have a discussion on how humanitarian assistance was a thing for the Indian Navy. So, sir, diving straight into it, India has established itself as a go-to nation, and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam being our philosophy. How did India achieve such a remarkable speed, efficiency, and its efforts? What are your comments?
You put it very well. India has established itself with the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. What does it mean? It means the world is one. If we can achieve that, there'll be peace, humanitarian philosophy of aid to everybody, good resources to everybody, because the world is so rich. And I must say, we have gone very fast. India always had this philosophy that the world is one. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. But during the period when Prime Minister Modi took over, he decided that there must be some action. That action is soft power, the soft power of India, the Vedic philosophy of India, which in Vedic times, whether it is to be confirmed or not, we had all the abilities in the world. We had Brahmastra weapons, we had aeroplane type of craft, we have cuisine, and we had a belief in religion that there was one God. So I must say, you have put it very well, we have become a go-to nation. Our standing in the world has gone up because of the soft power. And of course, the soft power includes what we have done for our neighboring countries, what we have done during the humanitarian disasters, what we've tried to spread to them, that we are not against anybody. We have not gone to war with anybody. Others have tried to go to war with us. So I think the world is one. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is a part of soft power. Soft power is by which you can convince a country, a people, a nation by persuasion. If they do not do that, you use some other tactics. And that is how I'm part of the Indian Navy. The Indian Navy spreads the maximum amount of soft power around the world as I can see it today.
Well, sir, speaking of the missions that the Indian Navy has carried forward, could you please elaborate a little on missions like SAGAR, SUKOON, Operation Need, and MSC Daniela Fire?
Well, what you seem to have mentioned are humanitarian missions
Right.
that the Indian Armed Forces, led of course by the Navy, because they've been offshore.
Right.
You must realize that the Indian Navy ships can go anywhere they like except 12 miles from any other country.
Absolutely.
For an Air Force to fly a plane, they have to put a flight plan into being. For an army to move, which is suspicious always, they have to get permission from the other country. The Indian Navy does not have to get any permission. And this is called HADR,
Right.
Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Relief, which has now become the duties of every country. The United Nations has operations of HADR and also peacekeeping. So the Indian Navy did one of its most important ones in verbal sense. Prime Minister himself articulated SAGAR. SAGAR means security
Right.
and growth for all in the region. So Indian Ocean states, where I think 48 of them, can rely on India for any assistance that we can possibly provide. So with that SAGAR in mind, India carried out many humanitarian operations in which the Air Force, the Navy, whether it was a tsunami in 2004. In fact, it was a turning point of India. While the American Navy was still discussing what to do when the tsunami hit, Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Tamil Nadu in India. While the American Navy was still discussing what to do, an order was passed by the Prime Minister in 2004 that ships to carry medical equipment, food, doctors from the East Coast, Vishakhapatnam, 32 ships were sailed out.
Incredible.
We did not know what the mission was, but it was humanitarian disaster relief. And they arrived in Indonesia before the American Navy arrived. But of course, once the American Navy came, the Indian Navy cooperated with the American Navy. We went to Sri Lanka and cleared their ports and provided support. We went to Maldives. After all, there was a navy of 32 ships. So that was an operation which changed the face of Indian Navy, the face of India, and that it had a small navy, but it had a capable navy. Thereafter, the Air Force also moved in with supplies to the Andamans because they had lost complete power. Hand generators were being used to transmit messages. And I think it's a feather in the cap of India that our three services got together and India's face changed. It had faced change in 1971 war when we made a new nation who was being brutally murdered. Refugees were coming in. So that was actually a war of humanitarian aid. People in trouble in East Pakistan were given a country, Sonar Bangla, of their own.
Right.
Then we moved to Operation SUKOON.
Right.
Oh, that was more recent. The Lebanon war. I mean, there seems to be some ceasefire as we are talking to you. But it was a period where Indians, Nepalese, Sri Lankans, who are our brethren in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, world is one, they were picked up by the Navy and brought ashore through Cyprus and other means, brought back to their home country so they didn't have to suffer the Lebanon war imposed by Israel, Hezbollah, and Gaza.
Right.
Whoever could get out, could get out. Then we have other operations which were conducted in the period that we have talked about. There was Operation Neil. They were on the similar lines where the Indian armed forces, led by the Navy, if it was a maritime state, to quickly go. While I must confess, the Army and the Air Force has done much better when there was a disaster in Uttarakhand. So therefore, one should not belittle the capability of Indian armed forces to come to the relief of neighbors and also our own country. There's the Disaster Relief Organization, but they need help. And what better help in peacetime can it be when the armed forces of India are generated by leadership? And today, one can say that the strong leadership in India.
Yeah.
Our Prime Minister has worked, I think, 24/7 to lead this country in disaster relief. If you tick the points that every country has got in peacekeeping and disaster relief, I think India will rank very high.
Right. I would strongly agree to that. Sir, asking about the image that India has globally these days through naval diplomacy, collaborations, and fostering goodwill with other nations. What are your comments on that?
Well, I can say, as somebody who's seen life since I was born and joined the Navy and coming to age, ripe old age, I've seen it all.
Right.
The image of the Indian is the highest today.
Wonderful.
If you went to any country
Right.
and you ask me why, because A, the economic condition of India is much better.
Absolutely.
The education state, much to be desired, but with the internet age, the common young man probably uses his mobile phone better than, I think, many in foreign countries.
Right.
Because basically, there is a philosophy in India that even the child who did not go to school or college was taught the Mahabharata and the Ramayana by heart. Now, when you do that, you'll agree with me
Yes.
that his mind is actually made sharp.
Yeah.
By going to school, you learn technology, you learn mathematics, you learn geometry.
Yes.
I think the way the country is moving with technology, we will have to face the jealousies of other countries.
Absolutely
Because
true.
that is called the rise and fall of nations.
That's true. Speaking of the rise and fall of the nation and the issues that come in with it, I would want to ask you, how did India's non combatant evacuation operations, what were the challenges through? And how did India emerge through it? The Indian Navy, I'm speaking about particularly.
Well, overall, our combatant actions, like we went for operation in Sri Lanka, Pavan, the government always tied its hands, one hand at the back, because we did not ever want to create disaster in any country.
Right.
So, therefore, any combatant operation or a non-combatant operation of small nature within our own country, because terrorism is a animal-like feature which other countries have perpetrated on India.
Right.
We have a few Naxals, we have a few terrorism, but we have never treated them harshly. Our response has been as per their response.
Right.
If they thought of killing, then our forces also thought of it. But if they did not think of killing, we treated them like our own country people and have treated them well. So, never in the history of the current India or in the past India, when our Cholas went and actually migrated and went to Southeast Asia,
Right.
Angkor Wat. Angkor Wat is a Hindu temple.
Absolutely.
It is bigger than any temple in India today.
Yes.
Or we went to Borobudur in Indonesia. We built an Hindu temple. If you go to Bali, so you have seen that even if we went to any country, what you said is very right. I didn't think of it earlier, but I'll use the word non-combatant. We captured soft power, and I think that is repeating itself slowly.
Yes.
The world moves very slowly in the rise and fall of nations, and we must also see that we strive for that. So you have put it very rightly. In non-combatant ways, in whatever action our armed forces or our country's people have gone to places, it has been non-combatant, and yet with soft power. The Angkor Wats and the Borobudur and the Ramayana and the Gita have proved to be a worldwide feature, especially in Southeast Asia.
That's true. So, coming back to the use of technology that you mentioned earlier in your response, I would want to ask you that technology actually plays a very critical role in success of such operations that we spoke about briefly. How is the Indian Navy leveraging technological advancements to enhance the efficiency and safety of the people or these missions?
A very good question on technology. So I will take you back to the independence of India. The Britain, for the effort that Indians had put in war, had to pay us money.
Right.
They were broke.
Yes.
And therefore, they decided to give us ships. So they gave us INS Delhi, they gave us INS Vikrant, they gave us INS Mysore.
Right.
And one of the deal was come and take 8 new ships, the Kukri, the Brahmaputra, the Talwar class. So 2,000 or more officers and sailors of the Indian Navy went to England up to 1960
Right.
and worked in technological shipyards.
Wow.
So therefore, I can say with very good conviction that I served those type of officers because technology was always in their mind. Because if you're at sea, you communicate with technology. If you cook your food, it has to be kept in a frozen refrigerator.
Right.
Technology. If it is very hot, your equipment will not work unless there's air conditioning. So we are very lucky in this Navy that those 2,000 who went abroad came and said we will build ships ourselves. So I'll sum up and tell you the most difficult ships in the world to build is an aircraft carrier and a nuclear submarine.
Wow.
Having achieved this, do I have to prove to anybody that we have not got on top of technology? I must say the Air Force also has got technology because they are as good. But they have imported technology in a Rafale aircraft or
Right.
a Mirage aircraft. We build our own ships and have to put in the technology, little bit of it imported, of course, and therefore the army is on ground. It
Yes.
needs lesser technology because it is manpower oriented.
Absolutely. That's
And
true.
Indian armed forces will sacrifice for themselves and for the country and for their regiment. So I like the question you asked me that this is technology. And of course, Navy is the first which has gone to civilian sector and said, I want to share technology with you. You give me technology, and I will tell you what the Navy needs. So I think on security levels, we were less severe.
Right.
Even if you went tomorrow
Yes.
and wanted a technological lecture, Navy would not say it is secret. They would keep the secret part away, but tell you everything else.
Right.
Because even as you speak to me, we are on technology today.
Absolutely.
So I hope it is clear that technology is coming faster and faster.
Yes.
And the last thing I would say is that we have leapfrogged. Reliance Company, while we were going mobile, picked up a cheap technology, which Americans have spent a lot of money,
Right.
but they had no use for it. It was lying with them, and therefore they gave Reliance mobile technology. And now, having got the confidence, mobile between Airtel, Vodafone, and things, our Airtel is uh, technology-wise, having gone to America, gone to England and other countries, I can see our mobile technology is as good as any other country. And in the Navy, I hear that quantum communications is coming into being.
All right.
What is quantum? Quantum is algorithms of the highest order. That even as I'm talking to you, we cannot be intercepted by anybody. Of course, technology will move
Right.
and somebody will be able to cut quantum communications.
Right. Speaking of technology and the Navy and the connection that it has together, I would want to know that India has maintained a neutral and impartial image in the in its humanitarian missions. So, how has this neutrality been achieved amidst complex geopolitical scenarios?
Well, I think it goes back to our culture,
Right.
the culture with which we live, of Hinduism, even a bit of Muslim, which is there. So, therefore, our nature is tempered to humanitarian actions. Yes, we become fighters when we are required to be, but that is in the background.
Right.
In the foreground, I can answer to you that you go in crowded streets and markets in India and you will find it absolutely peaceful to go through. When I see the television, foreigners going into a market like Sarojini or anywhere else, they feel absolutely safe. So I think our culture is part of which brings in our humanitarian attitudes, which we have talked about,
Right.
what we have done for our countries. And I think it's very well summed up by the Prime Minister's SAGAR.
Yes.
Security is very important,
Right.
and therefore growth is important. And he has actually put Sagar into many other fields for the country.
Absolutely. So, sir, I would like to circle back to the philosophy of India, the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and soft power. So, do you believe that conducting such missions is contributing to the development of India's soft power image in the world?
Well, Joseph Nye, who wrote about South Far for the first time,
1980s.
and I think one of our ministers, Jetli, also, when he was defense minister, came and he just saw the soft power of the Navy.
Right.
You know, we say show the flag. When we go to another country, an Indian comes on board and he touches the ship and does namaste to the ship. So
Wonderful.
I think
Culture.
what more soft power can you have uh, than what we can give? Navy is one example. Even when Indian Air Force takes part in a foreign exhibition and sees the flying capability of India or the LCA aircraft we have built, that gives pride to every Indian around the world. And with a population of 140 crore,
Right.
we have a huge population of diaspora in America,
Absolutely.
in England, and others. So, without any doubt, the soft power of India, because our wealth has improved, we were an impoverished
Right.
country that lived from ship to mouth when food aid was coming. But today there is food abundance, and therefore, with the technology, and I must also add, since I'm on the table and seeing you, our media in films
Right.
that have been produced. Some of them have produced superb
Yes.
films to project the soft power of India.
Right.
And the few war films of 1971 war have also shown the, the fierce fighting capability of this country.
True.
The thinking capability, whether it was Field Marshal Manekshaw or whether it was Indira Gandhi, and leaders like that.
Right.
So, very correctly, the soft power of India has increased and contributed to rise of India in the last 10, 15 years.
India's outreach in HADR efforts is often seen as a testament to its growing capacities in the naval force. What are your comments on that?
Well, whenever I get a naval question, and having taken part for 30 years in that
Right.
navy, we did a lot of HADR.
Right.
But today, the capability of HADR, the ships are much bigger.
True.
When INS, I think it was Vikrant long ago went to Sri Lanka, it could evacuate 2,000 people.
Right.
During the COVID, INS Jalashwa was running up and down in Southeast Asia, bringing Nepalese, Sri Lankans, and Bangladeshis,
Right.
and also few Pakistanis back to their home countries. So I can certainly say that while an aircraft, even if it's the biggest aircraft, can handle 300 people, a naval ship will go slower.
Right.
But it'll take on 2,000 people. INS Vikrant and INS Vikramaditya could actually take on 5 to 7,000 people in
Incredible.
humanitarian defeats. And therefore, while I'm not saying this with any pride, I'm of course saying it with pride, but no supercilious feeling
Right.
that it's the Navy. But worldwide, maritime power has contributed to the rise and fall of nations.
Right.
Even the surrender of the Japanese was taken on a ship where few Indian naval officers were present in Japan off Tokyo. Tokyo is not a harbor, it's the Oklahoma harbor. So I can say that yes, Indian Navy is in the forefront. And when we have landing ships, we have Air Force helicopters on board, we have Indian Army on board, and we carry out landing operations.
Right.
It's a tri-service operation, even for war or for humanitarian relief.
That's true. It's a huge thing what Indian Navy has done for all the humanitarian assistance that has come in. So, sir, I would want to ask you a personal question on a very personal note. Being a naval officer, what do you recall when you go back? How have you served, and anything that you want to like to share?
Well, I will share with you very personally that having joined the Navy as not a very strong young man,
Right.
but coming from a good education with a first class first from UP, the Navy, through the NDA, made me a bit of a tough man.
Right.
And if today at my age I'm able to play golf the way I do, or to swim my way, so my physical condition
Right.
in the armed force, and especially in the Navy, when we joined the Navy, we went abroad, every port we went to, the captain used to say, like I said when I was, for God's sake, go and beat that team there. So even if we were at sea, we were trying to play hockey on the deck
All
with the
right.
tennis ball. So we've got our marksmanship, We did our firing in the evening
Right.
on the ship. So, on a personal note, I was watching technology. I was working with radars.
Right.
I became a navigator. They sent me twice. And I think the naval training is something we have copied from the Royal Navy, the Russian Navy, and now the American Navy. You cannot take charge of a ship unless you're trained. Even a captain is trained.
Right.
So, therefore, when I left the Navy, I had to, by age, retire. I was able to get a very good admission to the Institute of Management.
Wow.
When they saw my qualifications, they forgave me that I had no business experience.
Right.
But when they saw from the Navy what little experience I had, and I must say, initial Institute of Management was tough.
Right.
There were young people who knew all about business, cash
Right.
flow, balance sheets. Unfortunately, Prime Minister Nehru did not allow economics to be taught. Therefore, I must confess on a personal note,
Yes.
when I fired a missile or a gun, I didn't know the cost.
Oh, wow.
But today, the officers know the cost.
Yeah.
And therefore, they're able to economize.
Right.
But I learned that and I got a good job. And I think naval officers who want to work after, because on a ship, we are technicians, we are hoteliers, we have to accommodate on Vikrant.
Right.
1,000, each man must get a bed.
Right.
Now, woman must get a separate bed
Absolutely.
and separate facilities.
Right.
We are also experts in the weapons system. We have to communicate with the world through internet.
Right.
So we are experts on that. And therefore, I'm lucky I come from that generation. The new generation, even luckier. They can get jobs after they've served 30, 35 years in the Navy,
Right.
if they want to work. But today, the more trend is, if you have enough money, you want to do what you like.
Right.
And that is another trend in the country.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. It was lovely having you here. For more such podcasts, like and share and stay tuned. Thank you.